This is a cryptocurrency platform coin that is built on an unknown, unidentified person.
The meaning of Satoshi Nakamoto, have you heard what that is yet? The word Satoshi Nakamoto means...
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
weird.
Crazy. Maybe that's not so much of a hidden gem. Maybe that's out in the open. So do you know that feeling you get when you discover that a legend is true? Well, I just learned about a essential Davy Jones of Bitcoin. You know, this is like the Blackbeard story where you're like, oh wait, that was a real guy, right? And this is actually kind of a scary story with some real buried treasure involved in the mix. And it's scary because as I'm learning about this, I'm thinking, could this like trigger the death of Bitcoin at some point? Like, and are we just all waiting for this to happen and not talking about it? So it is weird. Okay, so this is what I discovered this guy today. And most of y'all, if you are into Bitcoin, you may already know about this. Doug is already wildly researched in this area. But this is Satoshi Nakamoto. This is a statue they've made of him. They've made several statues of this guy. And it's possibly a pseudonym or an alias. You know, it's probably not his real name. It could be, but his true identity is technically unknown. The name is Japanese. It suggests maybe he was a Japanese guy or is a Japanese guy living in Japan. However, it could also be, you know, a software engineer from United States or Europe. You know, some different theories are out there. But assuming that he's an individual, like there's an individual person behind this name, his Bitcoin holdings make him one of the wealthiest people in the world, with just around 135 billion in this Bitcoin wallet. $135 billion. This is crazy. So I
love the metaphor in this statue right here, because it's like a now you see me, now you don't kind of thing. Like a little bit more real life than I think they intended.
Right, because he's there. And the crazy thing is if you read the story of Bitcoin, he's there in the origins of Bitcoin, and then suddenly he's gone, right? So he helped develop Bitcoin. He authored the Bitcoin white paper, created and deployed Bitcoin's original reference implementation, and he devised the first blockchain database. And so he was active in the development of Bitcoin. And now obviously there's a huge team of people that kind of run the behind the scenes of Bitcoin, but he was active in the development until December of 2010. And suddenly, boom, he's gone, right? And he said, I'm moving on to other things. This is wild because we're looking at a wallet with billions, over $100 billion in Bitcoin that has not been touched since that time. It hasn't moved. And we can see that data publicly. And it's like, what's going on there? So Doug, let's jump into this story a little bit deeper, because man, this is crazy. And I think this holds some really, really dangerous implications for Bitcoin if any of this starts changing.
Well, there's two possible sides to it, actually. And there is the dangerous side, which is what is the easy one to assume, because most of the information that we have would lead to that conclusion. So the theory side is when it gets into stuff where you're like, actually, that might work out pretty all right for the country in general. So, but okay, so doing a little bit of backstory. If you want to know about Bitcoin, you got to go back. It didn't just literally come out of thin air, even though it really does feel like it did. But the biggest question during the boom of the internet days in the 90s was, they knew, they being, you know, the ethereal they, whoever they are, they knew that we were going to have to move to a digital currency system at some point, because with the internet coming into play, they're like, this is the wave of the future, right? So the biggest question became, how do you make cash that's digital, anonymous, can't be double spent or cheated in any way, and doesn't require a bank for approval? And so they, being the NSA, started working on a paper and a concept, and they designed literally what is exactly Bitcoin. This paper right here that I'm showing you guys was published in 1996.
Wow.
And these names right here, you can see Lori Law, Susan's, whatever, I don't know, you got it, from the NSA, National Security Agency for Research and Technology. These people came up with how to make Bitcoin. They just weren't calling it that yet. Yeah. If you read through this, it is very similar to the white paper for Bitcoin. It reads just like it. So this paper published in 1996, And then it kind of went silent. You didn't see anything happen for a while. And then all of a sudden in 2009, Bitcoin white paper comes out.
Only about a little over a decade after this paper came out in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
So, even the time there, if it was like 30 years later or something, then it would be different, right? But just a little over 10 years later,
when you consider how complex this is, like, this is not an easy thing to pull off. You can't, like, especially with the internet being kind of new-ish in a way, you don't just like go on and open up your favorite app and be like, create me a digital currency. It's like, it doesn't work like that. Not even now. It doesn't work like that now. So do you probably know about what happened right before Bitcoin was introduced to the world?
It was the crash. The 2008 crash.
Yes, and the bank buyouts. The banks were failing, and it just leads one to wonder, did they know? In 96, they knew these banks are failing and they're going to get too big to fail, quote unquote, and something's going to have to happen. So 2009, Bitcoin white paper published, right? So if Bitcoin wasn't created by the CIA, then the CIA had their sights on it. That's like the big line. Tucker Carlson said it the other day. He was like, well, Bitcoin was created by the CIA. And everybody was like, what are you talking about? So this is absolutely fascinating.
So what you're proposing here, the theory is that this guy, Satoshi, is not an individual necessarily, but the theory is that he's a pseudonym for the CIA and that the CIA was behind this person, and this originator of Bitcoin.
If not the CIA, then a clandestine group like that. So like the NSA would be obviously the next best one.
And I was reading another theory earlier today that connects it to the Bank of England and all that. So it's like,
it's crazy.
A lot of different options there.
It's just also anonymous, and you can't really trace it as well as you would think you should be able to. So it screams some sort of operation. What happened was Satoshi created Bitcoin, right? Whoever Satoshi is. And then in 2009 and then 2010, he hands it over to Gavin Anderson, who's like considered one of the original people of Bitcoin, right? Like, he really took on the whole Bitcoin project and helped propel it into what it is now. And this was after he like found the Bitcoin white paper and started communicating with Satoshi. And then on April 26, 2011, Satoshi steps down, writes, because he doesn't communicate any other way, I have better things to move on to. He leaves Bitcoin entirely, just walks away from the project, gone, wants nothing more to do with it, leaves it to Anderson. Anderson, who has never met Satoshi before in person, takes over the whole project. And Anderson, I actually looked it up. He has never, here's an article where it talks about Anderson, and no one has ever met Satoshi, has never communicated with him verbally, no audio, nothing. Has always ever been text, and like, emails, forums, whatever. And
that's what's so crazy about it, is that he really is anonymous. Like, this is a cryptocurrency platform, coin, all these things that is built on an unknown, unidentified person. Like, that's what's so weird to me about it, is like, okay, wait a minute. That made my head spin when I heard that. I was like, I thought that there was and if the character of this person could be attacked, if the character of this person was known, or whatever, then it's like that could really influence the strength of Bitcoin and people's trust in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it could start to erode things very quickly, whether it's an individual, the CIA, or an organization, or whatever.
Yeah, but people will freak out a little bit more if it's something like the CIA, because
exactly,
it's weird. Okay, so once again, April 26, 2011, Satoshi steps down. And then April 27th, 2011, the day after, literally day after, Gavin Anderson writes on this Bitcoin forum, I want to get this out in the open because it's the kind of thing that will generate conspiracy theories. I'm going to give a presentation about Bitcoin at CIA headquarters in June at an emerging technologies conference for the U.S. intelligence community. So he goes and talks to the CIA about the Bitcoin project the day after Satoshi's gone.
Wow.
that is just odd to me. And of course, the point behind him doing this forum was to be like killing all the conspiracy theories. But I was like, dude, you just added to it, in my opinion. And this is where it gets really weird. And this is a little bit of an arbitrary connection, but I couldn't help but make this connection. In January of 2012, an anonymous entity called Cicada 3301 crawled through the underbelly of the internet, offering this weird clandestine recruitment game. I remember when this happened, and I don't know if a lot of people were around, but I remember it was like 2012 to 2014 era. It was a weird movie-like challenge to extremely intelligent individuals presenting various challenges to overcome. Puzzles involving cryptography, steganography, which is hidden data in images and audio. And basically what they were doing is they were looking for people who could do the exact same things that you needed to, the same kinds of intelligence that you need for making something like Bitcoin or handling something like Bitcoin, this weird cryptocurrency. That's what they were looking for. Some people who had the same kind of mental capability to do this kind of thing. So I don't know if it's connected or not, but I saw that and I was like, oh yeah, that was that weird thing. So the CIA could have potentially either invented or taken over Bitcoin. And if they did, they would have needed a crew to run it. Well, they just got their crew by doing this crazy experiment. There's no way that something like Bitcoin, something as elaborate as Bitcoin, was created and implemented and ran by just one person. Nobody's that smart. That's just not a thing. To me, the complexity of the project alone is proof that Satoshi is at least not just one individual. Whether or not it's the CIA, it doesn't matter. It had to be a group of people, in my opinion. I don't believe that you could have just had one guy in a basement somewhere being like, oh, you know what? I think I'll just crank this thing out.
Well, from what I've read, those that think that it is an individual would say he's at least genius level. Like that. It's
Absolutely.
like this is a genius level individual from the movies that is like, next level, like, and it's like, it would have to be something like that if it was an individual. More likely scenario is what you're saying is that it was a group of people. Like, it makes a lot more sense that way. Man, so that's so interesting.
One more little factoid here that I connected. I remember about a year ago, maybe a couple of years ago now, watching this guy. His name is Dan Pina. I really respect him. And if anybody goes and watches him, don't watch around kids. He's known to be foul-mouthed, but he's really smart. Great investor, millionaire. He said that if you knew who was behind Bitcoin, you would sell it all right now, and Bitcoin would go to zero. He said that a few years ago. So after putting all the CIA connection stuff in with it, I'm like, that actually lines up really well with what Dan Pina was saying. And then, I'm sorry, I said one more factoid. Here's the last factoid. The meaning of Satoshi Nakamoto, have you heard what that is yet?
I think I was reading about that earlier today, yeah.
Literally, central intelligence.
Oh, I did not read that.
The word Satoshi Nakamoto means central intelligence.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. That's weird. Crazy. Maybe that's not so much of a hidden gem. Maybe that's out in the open. So that's crazy. Yeah. Well, that maybe nailed the lid shut on the coffin for me. But let's just pretend. Here's my response to this: is like, let's pretend it was an individual. Like, I was watching a episode of the Iced Coffee Hour earlier today, which is where I kind of got the launching point for this episode idea, because I'm like, I've never heard about this before. This is crazy. This is Stephen Graham, Iced Coffee Hour, and he interviews Andre Jick, who's another YouTuber. They both talk about finances all the time. And one of the things that Andre says is, he says the Bitcoin community doesn't like to talk about who Satoshi is, because that's an attack factor on Bitcoin. So if we understood, that's the point he was making, is like, if we understood who was behind this originally, then it's like, and if we didn't fully trust them, then all of a sudden it destroys its credibility, right? Or destroys the trust there. But I think there's maybe even some other implications here as well. This is $135 billion sitting in a wallet for over 14 years. It has not moved, has not been touched. And it's like, if it belongs to an individual, let's just pretend that there's a real guy, Satoshi Nakamoto, and maybe it's a pseudonym, maybe that's not his real name, but let's pretend like it's an individual, right? If all of a sudden they said, I've waited long enough, here's, I need to get this money out and I need to sell this, then it's like, that could, number one, that's a ton of money. I mean, and it's like, there is a huge market cap on Bitcoin. So 135 billion versus all the money invested in Bitcoin, it's not enough to bring Bitcoin down, right? If let's say he sold all that, I don't think that's enough to bring Bitcoin down itself. But it's the person who's selling it that could influence Bitcoin and make everybody go, oh, wait a minute.
Exactly.
The originator of Bitcoin is selling. That means that we've hit the top, or that means something's wrong. We've all got to get out. That could start the ball rolling. But even if that person, so that these guys are saying nobody's ever going to touch that wallet, right? No one's going to touch it. And they're like, he's probably dead if he's a person, and I'm like, hey, even if it was an individual and even if he did die, and that's why no one's touched the wallet, in my mind, I'm like, if there's any living relative or anybody, any friend of this person or anybody that knows about this person's wallet, anybody out there at all, I mean, that's $130 something billion just sitting there ready to be found. It's like how, somebody is going to track that thing down and get the information and find the money, like somebody's going to sell it. So if it's an individual, at some point, I feel like that's going to be touched, right? Because there's nobody rich enough in the world to go, 135 billion, I'm just going to leave it there forever,
Right. Yeah.
But that also lends credibility to your theory about the CIA. It's like that makes a lot more sense why it hasn't been touched. If it was the CIA or somebody like that, and it's like, and if that's true, that also could erode. There you go. It could erode the trust. That's the word I was looking for earlier. It could erode the trust of people that are investing in Bitcoin. So I really think this could be disastrous either way. Whichever way you want to go with it, whichever theory, it's like it could be terrible for Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, but the positive side of this is, let's say, just for example, it is the CIA. They own all this Bitcoin, and they leverage it, which a big conversation that's happening right now is using Bitcoin to pay off national debt. Mm-hmm. What if, before word gets out, they leverage it in that way where they use it to pay off national debt? It's like in whatever, I don't honestly know how that works, but they could do it somehow so that now they empty their wallet into the national debt. And then even though that might trigger some sort of a windfall in selling off Bitcoin, then probably what would happen is somebody's going to swoop in and buy that at a pretty discounted price. And then now we've got like this weird transaction where national debt is getting wiped out, but then people are still making money off of it. So it could work out in a positive way like that. But of course, it would be more complex than that. That's the simple bottom line. But that is a possibility, I do think. So, I don't know. It'd be crazy.
I mean, it would be crazy. I think it's a possibility. I think obviously, if the rest of the government doesn't even know that the CIA or whoever has this actually has it, then it's like, is it actually useful? Is anybody actually going to touch it? I don't know. Are they just using it, for leverage for other reasons? Maybe, possibly. I want to look at what just came out today, though. I mean, here's this crazy article, not today, but 4 days ago, before we shot this video. Crazy article. A Satoshi era Bitcoin whale awakens after 14 years. Will it move the Bitcoin price? So this is crazy because it's like people, like the iced coffee hour guy said, hey, no one's going to touch this. No one's touched this in 14 years. Well, here's an example of a wallet that has not been touched in 14 years. That actually, it says a Bitcoin wallet dating back to the cryptocurrency's earliest days has just come to life after 14 years of inactivity. The address believed to have mined around 4,000 Bitcoin between April and June of 2009. So this is right at Bitcoin's birth, right? And what happened is like that means that this is one of the original founders potentially, or somebody that was working with the founders, whatever it may be, and they haven't touched it since 2011. Now there was a little bit of movement there, the next couple of years, but they technically haven't touched it since 2011. And now all of a sudden, I think it was just like a week ago, they transferred 150 Bitcoin out of this account. So it's like, this is a wallet that didn't move for so many years, almost 15 years. And suddenly they transfer 150 Bitcoin out. And it's like, okay, so if that's true, if that could happen, is the Satoshi wallet actually that safe, right? This one was only worth 16 million. So that's way less than 130 something billion dollars or whatever. But still, that I think that's a huge deal. And this is, I don't know, to me, I'm like, this is crazy. Doug, I guess you dropped out. My NSA agents shut me down. Oh my gosh, that's great. Anyways, all right, y'all let me know what you think about it. Is this something to worry about? If you're invested in Bitcoin, did you know about this before this episode? And are you worried about it? Are you not worried about it? Let me know in the comments why not. And let us know if you want us to do a deep dive about this topic, and we may do a deeper dive at some point. Super fascinating stuff. I'll see y'all next time.